A lonely maid spent Christmas alone until her millionaire boss showed up at her door. Christmas night in Seattle has a strange kind of beauty. Twinkling lights reflecting on rain-soaked streets, laughter drifting from warm windows, and distant holiday music echoing through the city. But on the top floor of Glassview Tower, inside a cold penthouse overlooking Lake Union, silence swallowed everything. Ethan Caldwell sat before the wide glass wall, staring at the glowing city below with an empty chest. He loosened his tie, the familiar motion of a man who had spent the entire day pretending to be busy. The expensive bottle of whiskey rested on the table, but he didn't even feel the urge to pour another drink. The last employee had left hours earlier, smiling politely as she wished him a Merry Christmas. Ethan had smiled back, even though both of them knew he had no plans beyond spending another night alone with the same heavy quiet. The room was too large, too spotless, too perfect, yet utterly devoid of warmth. Since Claire, his wife, died in a car accident 3 years ago, he hadn't truly celebrated a single holiday. Work had become his armor. Endless meetings and deadlines were the only way to avoid confronting the hollow space inside him. He looked down at his hands, wondering when they had become nothing more than tools for typing code, signing contracts, and operating like a machine stripped of feeling. Loneliness clung to him like a shadow he could never outrun. And then, a soft knocking broke the silence. Not loud, not urgent, just gentle enough to pull him out of the suffocating stillness. Ethan frowned. At this hour, who could possibly be at his door? He stood, walked toward it, unaware that this simple moment, those quiet knocks on a lonely Christmas night, would be the beginning of something that would change his life forever. Ethan expected nothing but the usual quiet when he opened the penthouse door, yet the first sight before him made him pause. Maya stood there, wrapped in a thin, rain-soaked jacket, still in her work uniform, her small hands tightly interlaced as if holding together the last bit of courage needed to stand at his doorway. The warm hallway light fell across her face, highlighting a mixture of hesitation and vulnerability he had never seen from her before. I'm sorry if I'm bothering you," she whispered, her voice almost drowned out by the rain outside. Ethan didn't speak, only gave a small nod, waiting. Maya took a slow, shaky breath, then lifted her gaze to meet his, direct, honest, unguarded. "Are you spending Christmas alone?" A simple question, yet it touched the most fragile part of him. He almost forced a polite smile, almost replied with the familiar lines, that he was working, that he didn't mind, that it didn't matter. But her eyes, warm without an ounce of pity, made pretending feel pointless. "Yeah," he admitted, his voice lower than usual. Worry flickered in her expression as if she regretted asking. But then, with surprising bravery, she continued, her voice trembling yet sincere enough to cut through the silence between them. "I know this is sudden, but I'm cooking a small Christmas dinner for me and my son tonight. I live in Tacoma. It's simple, nothing fancy. But if you don't have plans, would you like to come eat with us?" The quiet stretched for a moment. Ethan felt his heartbeat slow, his chest tighten. A family invitation, a door opening in the middle of a cold Christmas night, a chance to step outside the loneliness he'd convinced himself to accept. Before his cautious mind could build a wall, his heart moved first. "I'd like to," he said softly but firmly. "Thank you for asking." A warm, bright smile bloomed on Maya's face, so genuine it seemed to warm the whole hallway. And when she walked away, Ethan knew he couldn't show up empty-handed. Minutes later, he was driving to the nearest supermarket, standing in front of a display of Christmas baskets, choosing one carefully, feeling a quiet, unfamiliar flutter in his chest. The gift basket rested on the passenger seat, and Ethan lingered behind the wheel longer than he intended. He didn't know why his heartbeat felt so unsteady over something as simple as a dinner invitation. Maybe it was Maya, the sincerity in her voice, the quiet warmth in her eyes. Or maybe it was because, for the first time in 3 years, he had a reason to step outside the cold shell he'd been living in. When he finally pulled out of the garage, Seattle's glittering skyline receded behind him like a world slowly closing. The highway stretched before him, cutting through blocks washed in soft winter rain. The farther he drove from downtown, the more the scenery shifted. Luxury apartments gave way to modest homes, small diners, corner stores with faded signs that still glowed cheerfully. Strings of Christmas lights hung unevenly from wooden porches, imperfect yet alive. Children ran along the sidewalks, Santa hats bouncing with each laugh as if the cold itself meant nothing. Something about it all stirred him. Ethan had grown up surrounded by abundance, raised in environments carefully curated and polished. His penthouse represented everything he'd worked for: success, security, prestige. But here, Tacoma breathed differently. Simpler, unvarnished, not glamorous, not curated, but strangely warm. And that warmth made him uneasy. Not because he feared the place, but because he wasn't sure if he belonged anywhere outside the sterile world he'd built. When he reached the address Maya had sent, he stopped in front of a small row of houses with metal rooftops. Her unit was easy to spot: a pale yellow door trimmed with green, a string of Christmas lights blinking weakly but charmingly across the porch. He climbed the steps and knocked. The door opened after only a moment, and Ethan had to steady himself. Maya was no longer in her uniform. She wore a simple red sweater, her hair loose and soft around her shoulders. The timid professionalism he always saw in her was replaced by something far gentler, far more genuine, a young woman quietly radiant. In her arms was a toddler, maybe a year and a half old. Wide round eyes, slightly curled hair, a spark of curiosity so bright it almost startled Ethan. "This is Leo," Maya said, smiling with a hint of shyness. "My son." It took Ethan a beat to respond. She had a child. All this time, he'd had no idea. But what stunned him more was the unexpected softness unfurling in his chest when Leo's clear, fearless gaze met his. No hesitation, only curiosity, like a small bird studying a new world. "Hi there, Leo," he murmured. Leo babbled something in return and reached out to grab Ethan's coat, fascinated by the fabric. Maya laughed softly. "He has a habit of liking strangers." She stepped aside to let him in. Ethan entered, and within seconds he understood why Maya's invitation had unsettled him so deeply. The apartment was small, but felt utterly alive. Toys scattered across the rug. A tiny Christmas tree decorated with mismatched ornaments. The warm scent of something baking drifted from the kitchen, mingling with soft holiday music from an old speaker. Nothing was polished or perfect, yet it held something his penthouse never had: the heartbeat of a real home. And for the first time in a very long while, Ethan felt he was stepping into a place that breathed, a place that lived, a place that felt true. Ethan barely made it 2 steps into the living room before a small but determined force collided with his leg. Leo had somehow slipped from Maya's arms and was now clinging to his pant leg as if the two of them had always known each other. The toddler's bright round eyes widened every time Ethan looked down, as if that alone were an invitation for attention. "Hey, easy there," Ethan murmured, trying for a gentle tone, despite clearly having no idea what he was doing. He wasn't used to children, wasn't used to tiny hands gripping him with such unfiltered trust. Within seconds, Leo was standing on wobbly legs, grabbing Ethan's tie and tugging with fascinated determination, babbling happily. Something in Ethan's chest softened, as if a tight knot had silently loosened. From the kitchen, Maya laughed. Warm, light, familiar. "Sorry, he's very clingy." "It's fine," Ethan said, steadying Leo with both hands. "I think I can handle it." The small kitchen filled the apartment with the comforting aroma of baked fish, butter, and toasted spices, scents Ethan hadn't been around in years. Maya moved smoothly between the stove and the counter, plating roasted cod, mashed potatoes, warm bread, and a simple salad onto a wooden table that had clearly witnessed many humble meals. Nothing was extravagant, yet the sight alone eased something in his heart. Dinner began with the soft clinking of utensils and Leo happily chatting to himself while smacking his spoon on the table. The warm light cast gentle shadows over Maya's face, highlighting her natural beauty, unpolished, honest, undeniably tender. Ethan took a bite of the cod, and his eyes widened slightly. "This is really good." Maya flushed at the compliment. "My mom taught me. Back in the small town in Oregon where I grew up, we always had this on Christmas." Her voice slowed, as if she were flipping through memories she rarely let herself revisit. Ethan didn't interrupt. He simply listened. "She passed away when I was 20. My dad followed a few months later." She inhaled softly. "I think he just couldn't live without her." Ethan set his fork down, the weight of her words lingering in the air. "After that, I met Leo's father, and I thought I was getting a new family." A hollow smile crossed her lips. "But when he found out I was pregnant, he said he wasn't ready, said I shouldn't complicate his life. And then he disappeared." The pain was no longer sharp, but deep and settled, like something learned to be carried. "I came to Tacoma because it was cheap enough to start over. No one knew me there. No pity, no whispers." Ethan watched her for a long moment. "You're stronger than you think." Maya's smile was faint but real. "What about you? Do you have anyone?" A heavy silence settled between them. Ethan took a slow breath. "I had Claire." He didn't speak her name often. Each time felt like reopening a scar. "She died in a car accident 3 years ago. Since then, I just buried myself in work. The more I worked, the less I had to feel." Maya lifted her gaze, her eyes soft with recognition. "So, we both lost something." No more words were needed. Their silence became a quiet bridge, a space where two hurt hearts could meet without fear. Leo, full and content, crawled toward Ethan, climbed into his lap, and within moments dozed off against his chest, tiny fingers still curled around Ethan's jacket. Ethan froze, afraid to breathe too hard. Something shifted inside him, a crack opening just enough for light to enter. "You can stay on the sofa tonight," Maya whispered, almost afraid to disturb the peace. "The drive back to Seattle isn't safe this late." Ethan looked down at the sleeping toddler, then up at her. "I'll stay." And for the first time in years, he didn't want to return to his empty, echoing penthouse. The next morning, Ethan woke to sounds he never expected on a Christmas morning. The soft sizzle of butter on a hot pan, the steady tap-tap-tap of a spoon against a table, and the half-sleepy giggles of a toddler. He blinked awake, disoriented by how deeply and peacefully he had slept, a kind of rest his luxurious penthouse had never once given him. He sat up on the small sofa, still warm from the blanket. The air carried the scent of cinnamon, butter, and freshly brewed coffee. Such familiar comfort that his chest tightened with memories he didn't dare touch. When he walked into the kitchen, Maya stood with her back toward him, hair tied loosely with a few strands escaping down her neck. Leo sat in his high chair, proudly conducting an orchestra with his spoon. "Merry Christmas," Maya said without turning. "Merry Christmas," he replied, surprised by how soft his own voice sounded. "I made French toast," she smiled, setting a warm plate on the table. "My mom always made this every Christmas morning." "This might be the first real Christmas breakfast I've had in years," Ethan admitted, sitting beside Leo, who immediately waved his spoon as if greeting him. After a breakfast full of crumbs, laughter, and syrup smudged all over Leo's cheeks, the three of them headed out. The sky had cleared in a rare winter gift, bright blue, crisp air, sunlight cutting through the last hints of morning mist. Maya suggested Wright Park, known for its pond, wooden bridges, and carpets of yellow leaves under bare trees. The moment his feet hit the ground, Leo launched forward like a wind-up toy, freed at last. He chased ducks near the pond, splashed in puddles, and squealed at every new discovery. Maya and Ethan followed at a slow pace, eyes never leaving the toddler. As Ethan watched them, a strange feeling washed over him. Not foreign, but unfamiliar in the way something long forgotten can be. "How do you still see magic in things?" he suddenly asked. Maya glanced at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean—" He pointed to Leo crouched by a puddle, inspecting his reflection. "After everything you went through, loss, loneliness, raising a baby alone, you still look at life like it's a gift." She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze softened on Leo, bathed in pale winter sunlight. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. "When I was pregnant, there was a day I thought I couldn't keep going. I lay in bed crying, thinking I wasn't strong enough to be a mom." She placed a hand on her stomach out of instinct. And then Leo kicked, just once, but it felt like a message, like he was telling me, "Hey, you're not alone." Ethan's throat tightened. "You're remarkable." Maya smiled, a sad, gentle smile. "Not remarkable. Just someone who kept going because someone needed me. When people have a reason, they stand up." Leo's sudden cry, "Mama!" cut through the air. He stood beside a bench, legs apart, face tense with a very familiar toddler emergency. Maya sighed. "It's time." "Time for what?" Ethan asked. She handed him the diaper bag. "You said you wanted to help." "I did, but this is, advanced level—" "Ethan!" Maya folded her arms, eyes twinkling. Now or never. And so, in the tiny changing room of Wright Park, Seattle's stoic CEO battled a pack of wipes and a squirming toddler. Leo laughed uncontrollably as Ethan tried not to lose control of the situation. Or the diaper. "No, don't kick. Wait, Maya." "You're doing great," she called from the doorway, barely suppressing her laughter. 5 minutes later, Ethan emerged, looking like he had survived a minor natural disaster, hair tousled, shirt skewed. "You did it," Maya teased. "And I'm prouder than I should be," he admitted. Maya laughed, a sound that made the winter morning warmer. And in that instant, Ethan realized something terrifyingly simple. He liked being near them, both of them, more than he should, and far more than he could ignore. The noon sunlight filtered through the wide canopy of Wright Park, scattering soft patches of gold across the grass where Maya sat. Leo was curled in her lap, fast asleep after a morning of running and laughing, his tiny breaths warm against her chest. Maya stroked his hair gently, her whole expression softened by the rare calm. Ethan stood a few steps away, watching them as if witnessing something too fragile to disturb. He moved closer, settling down beside her. For a moment, neither spoke. Only the whisper of wind and the distant splash of ducks broke the quiet. "Maya," Ethan finally said, his voice low, partly not to wake Leo, partly because the truth itself felt breakable. "I need to tell you something." She looked up, waiting. "Being with you and Leo," Ethan faltered, swallowing. "It makes me feel alive again, really alive." Maya's lashes trembled, disbelief and fear flickering together. "I want a chance to know you, truly know you, not as your boss, not as someone above you, just as Ethan." His voice calmed, steady. "I don't remember the last time I felt anything like this." Maya's breath caught. She shook her head, gently but painfully. "Ethan, I don't fit into your world." "I know." "No, you don't." She looked down at Leo, pulling him closer as if shielding both herself and her son. "I'm broke. I'm a single mom. I didn't finish college. I'm working job to job just to keep us afloat. And you're someone people admire, someone important." Ethan opened his mouth, but she continued, voice cracking. "Do you know what people will say? That I'm with you for money, that I'm a gold digger, that you're foolish for getting involved with someone like me." Her eyes glistened with fear, raw, unhidden. "And one day, you might look at me and feel ashamed of where I come from, and then you'll walk away." Pain slashed across Ethan's expression. "But the part that terrifies me most," Maya whispered, staring at the sleeping child in her arms, "is not that I get hurt. It's Leo. I can't let him bond with someone only to be abandoned. Not again. Not like his father did." Silence pressed down around them. Ethan inhaled deeply and spoke with a tremor he didn't try to hide. "I'm scared too." Maya's eyes snapped up. "I'm scared of getting hurt again, scared of opening my heart just to lose someone else I care about." His breath shuddered. "But I'm even more afraid of standing here, feeling all of this, and letting you walk away. Then spending the rest of my life wondering what could have happened." Maya's tears slipped silently onto Leo's hair. Both of them were afraid. She feared being abandoned again. He feared returning to a hollow life without meaning. And somewhere in that fear, their feelings had already taken root, too deep to deny, too real to ignore. When Ethan left Tacoma after Christmas, the highway ahead seemed longer than usual. The strings of lights that had felt warm and magical days earlier now flickered coldly against the night, reminding him of everything he had just stepped away from. When he entered his penthouse and the automatic lights turned on, illuminating every flawless, empty corner, loneliness hit him with a sharpness he had never felt before. Luxury had never looked so sterile, so painfully quiet. A few days later, Maya returned to work. She knocked 3 times, exactly as she always did, but the moment she walked in, something in the air shifted. Her posture was formal, her eyes fixed on the floor, her voice stiff. "Good morning, Mr. Caldwell." Ethan froze. The title, the distance, the politeness, it felt like she had slammed a door he didn't know was open. "Maya, you don't have to do that," he said softly. But she only straightened her tools, her voice clipped and controlled. "I'll start with the living room." He stepped toward her, but she instinctively moved back half a step. The invisible wall she was rebuilding rose between them, brick by brick, and he felt each one like a blow. He was about to speak again when her phone rang. She answered, and the color drained from her face instantly. "Mrs. Rosa? What happened?" Her voice cracked. "Leo, how high is the fever? How long has he been crying?" She was shaking. Ethan didn't need to hear more. "Come on," he said, already reaching for his keys. "No, I can take the bus." "Maya." His tone left no room for argument. "I'm taking you to Tacoma. Now." She nodded, trembling. When they reached her apartment, the air was thick with fear. Leo lay on the sofa, flushed bright red, tiny hands twitching, breaths heavy and uneven. Maya dropped to her knees beside him, gathering him into her arms. "Baby, Mama's here. Mama's here." Ethan felt something twist painfully inside him. He scooped both of them into the car, driving straight to the nearest ER. The chaos inside hit them like a wall, children crying, people coughing, a woman gasping for air in a wheelchair. The number screen blinked slowly, mockingly. 2-hour wait, the nurse said flatly. 2 hours? He's shaking, Ethan snapped, unable to hide the panic rising in his chest. "Everyone here is urgent, sir. You'll need to wait." Ethan clenched his fists until his knuckles whitened. This was the first time in his life that money meant nothing, and the helplessness burned hotter than anger. "We're going to a private hospital. I'll pay," he said firmly. Maya's answer was immediate and sharp. "No, I can't. If I start depending on you, I won't know where to stop." Her voice trembled. "I can't lose myself like that, and one day—" "I wouldn't leave you," Ethan blurted. But Maya only hugged Leo tighter, whispering brokenly, "I can't let my son be abandoned again." Chase. When they were finally called in, the diagnosis eased the knot of fear. Middle ear infection. Painful, feverish, but not dangerous. Medication and monitoring would be enough. Leo fell asleep in Maya's arms on the way home. She laid him gently in bed, pulled the blanket to his chin, then stood frozen, staring at him as if afraid he would disappear if she blinked. When she turned, tears were already falling. "I was so scared, Ethan, so scared I couldn't breathe." He stepped close, placing a hand on her shoulder with a softness that steadied them both. "You weren't alone," he murmured. Maya leaned into him, exhausted and trembling. And for the first time, Ethan understood with startling clarity. He belonged here, far more than in the empty palace he called home. The small apartment was wrapped in the warm amber glow of the bedside lamp, a tenderness that softened even the hardest moments. Maya remained beside Leo's bed, gently brushing her son's damp hair, her shoulders trembling with a mixture of exhaustion and fear. Fear carved into her bones after too many nights facing the world alone. Ethan watched her quietly, seeing not just her strength, but everything she carried beneath it. "Maya," he said softly, afraid his voice might break her further. She turned toward him, her eyes shining with tears. "I'm scared, Ethan, scared of everything, scared that if I trust someone again, it'll all fall apart." But she swallowed hard, forcing herself past the ache. "When you're here, I feel safe, for the first time in a long time." The words hit him like a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He stepped closer, slowly, deliberately, as if every step was a vow. "Maya," he murmured, voice steady despite the tremor in his chest, "I'm falling in love with you." She closed her eyes, trembling, not from rejection, but from the terror of wanting to believe him. "Don't say that unless you're sure." "I'm sure," he answered instantly. "I know it's scary. I know I could lose something precious again. But I'm more afraid of letting you walk away and living the rest of my life wondering what could have been." Maya sank onto the edge of the bed, looking down at Leo before meeting Ethan's gaze again. Something gentler, softer, almost fragile flickered within her, like the first thaw of ice after a long winter. "Can you stay? Just don't go yet." And at that moment, Ethan understood the weight of her request. The door she had guarded for years had opened, even if only a little, and he needed to step through with absolute sincerity. "I'll stay," he said. That night, Ethan slept on the small sofa, but it was the warmest place he'd ever known. There was Leo's breathing in the next room, the soft rustle of Maya cleaning up, the whisper of wind outside the window. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel the empty ache of loneliness. He didn't need a drink to fall asleep, didn't need work to numb his thoughts. He simply slept, as someone who had finally found something real. In the days that followed, Ethan visited almost every day, sometimes with warm soup, sometimes with fruit, sometimes with tiny toys that made Leo laugh and race toward him with unrestrained joy. Maya didn't stop him, didn't hide behind walls anymore. She simply watched him, at times smiling, at times quietly absorbing the sight of Ethan kneeling on the floor, playing clumsily but tenderly with her son. Then one afternoon, while Ethan was helping Leo stack colorful wooden blocks, the boy suddenly looked up, pointed at him, and said with absolute clarity, "Dada?" Ethan froze. Maya froze. The room fell utterly silent, before both of their hearts stumbled at the same time. Leo repeated it, louder this time, with certainty. "Dada!" A trembling smile broke across Ethan's face. He gathered the toddler into his arms, holding him close, and in that instant, something inside him settled with a profound certainty. He loved them, not slowly, not cautiously, but deeply, wholly, irreversibly. Maya watched the scene, tears gathering, and for the first time, she didn't swallow them back. She let her heart feel. She let Ethan in, not just into her home, but into the fragile spaces she had protected for years. The heart she once believed was permanently closed, finally opened. In the final days of December, as Seattle settled into its damp winter chill, Ethan approached Maya with a small white invitation card in hand. He explained the annual New Year's Eve fundraising gala, the biggest event of the year, sponsored by TechWave, and then, with a hesitation that betrayed how important the moment was to him, he asked, "Would you come with me?" Maya froze for a heartbeat. She knew this invitation wasn't like their evenings in Tacoma or their quiet moments beside Leo. This meant stepping into his world, into a place full of polished shoes, designer gowns, sharp eyes, and sharper whispers. But when she looked into Ethan's steady gaze, she exhaled softly. "I'll go." The next afternoon, she slipped into a second-hand store on the outskirts of Tacoma. Nothing glamorous, just a few rows of worn metal racks beneath buzzing neon lights. Yet there, tucked among forgotten dresses, she found a simple black gown. Soft fabric, clean lines, a quiet kind of elegance. $18, the owner said. Maya smiled. Perfect. On December 31st, Ethan waited in the lobby of her apartment, a small bouquet in hand. When the door opened, his breath caught. Maya stood framed in the doorway, her hair gently curled, her eyes bright beneath natural lashes, the black dress falling gracefully with every movement. No jewels, no elaborate makeup, just her. Simple, honest, stunning. "You look incredible," he murmured. At the luxury hotel hosting the gala, Maya immediately felt the weight of glances drifting her way, not lingering, but sharp enough to pierce. Women whispered behind manicured hands, men nodded with polite detachment. This world wasn't hers, and she sensed it instantly. But Ethan never stepped more than an arm's length away. His hand remained gently at her back, a quiet, steady reminder that she wasn't alone, not tonight. As jazz music floated through the ballroom and conversations buzzed with talk of stocks, charity boards, and investment portfolios, Maya found herself craving a moment of air. Ethan noticed before she spoke. He guided her to the balcony, where the night wind brushed through her hair and the lights of Seattle shimmered across Elliott Bay. Inside, the countdown to the new year began. Outside, there was only the two of them, standing so close, their breaths mingled. "Maya," Ethan said, his voice low, almost reverent, as if speaking louder would shatter everything. "I love you." She closed her eyes, letting the words settle into the fragile space she had protected for years. "I love you too," she whispered. "But I'm still scared. Scared I don't belong in your world. Scared people will see me as someone chasing your life, not standing beside it." Ethan lifted her chin gently. "I don't need their world," he said. "I just need you." As the countdown echoed through the ballroom, 10, 9, 8, Ethan leaned in, and when the crowd roared, 3, 2, 1, and fireworks bloomed above the harbor, their lips met. A kiss that felt like a beginning, like something once lost finding its way back. Maya pulled away first, breath unsteady. "Ethan," she murmured, "I'm going to quit my job. I don't want a shadow between us." He started to protest, but she placed a hand over his heart. "I want to walk beside you, without anything trailing behind me." Weeks later, after submitting applications and interviewing on her own, without a single favor or phone call, she was hired as a floor supervisor at a major downtown hotel. Better pay, stable hours. She moved into a brighter apartment with a room just for Leo. And Leo, ever since the day he called Ethan Dada, had never stopped. Each time Ethan walked through the door, the toddler ran into his arms, small hands reaching up as if his whole universe had arrived. In those embraces, Ethan understood something he thought he had lost forever. Family wasn't gone. It had simply been waiting for the right moment to return. That night, Seattle was remarkably quiet. The rain had finally stopped, leaving tiny droplets on the balcony railing that glittered like shards of glass, reflecting the distant street lights. Maya leaned against the railing, holding a warm cup of tea in her hands, watching the flow of cars below like a ribbon of shimmering light. Inside, Leo slept soundly with his teddy bear clutched to his chest, the small apartment peaceful with the gentle rhythm of his breathing. Ethan stepped onto the balcony without a sound, yet Maya turned as if she could feel him before she heard him. He smiled, moved to stand beside her, and for a moment neither spoke. They just stood there, wrapped in the same quiet, the same breath of winter night, the same sense of belonging. "Maya," Ethan said softly, though his voice carried a trembling edge. "I've been thinking about this for weeks, and I don't want to wait anymore." She looked at him fully then, surprise flickering across her features. But before she could ask anything, Ethan took a slow step back, steadying himself. And then he knelt down, right there on the small balcony, where the three of them had shared dinners, laughter, and the fragile work of healing. The city lights caught on the ring box he opened, a thin band of silver, simple, with a tiny stone no larger than a grain of rice. Not extravagant, not meant to impress, but honest, sincere, and exactly right. "Maya," he said, looking up into her eyes, "I love you. Not because I'm lonely, not to fill a void, but because you're the person who taught me how to live again. You and Leo, you gave me a family I never thought I'd have again." He swallowed, voice roughening. "I can't promise life will always be easy, but I can promise I'll stand beside you, beside both of you, through anything. Will you be my wife?" Maya brought a hand to her mouth as tears rushed forward far too quickly to hide. She had once believed life only offered loss, unfinished stories, and beginnings that never found their endings. But here he was, the man her heart had opened for, the man who had opened a new door inside her life. She nodded, then whispered into the cold night air, "Yes, I say yes. I choose you." Ethan rose immediately, pulling her into his arms, his shoulders trembling. Maya buried her face into his neck, crying softly. But they were tears filled with peace, not fear. Just then, the bedroom door creaked open. Leo, hair tousled, holding his teddy bear, blinked at the two adults embracing on the balcony. "Party?" he asked, sleepy but hopeful. Maya laughed through her tears. Ethan bent down and scooped the toddler into his arms. "Yeah, buddy," he said, kissing Leo's head. "A little party for our family." Maya wrapped her arms around them both, and on that small balcony, lit by the glow of the city, the three people who once stood alone in three different worlds now held onto one another, as if they had finally found the place they were meant to belong. And so their story ended, not with magic, but with something far more real. A love gentle enough to heal two broken hearts, and strong enough to build a new family together.